So this month, we're going to explore the Science of Mind New Thought teachings found in this classic movie, The Wizard of Oz. And today's talk is titled Over the Rainbow. So we've all seen this movie, right? Many, many, many times. So for this entire month, we'll journey back to Oz to look at spiritual truths that pervade all life and that help us learn about our own lives with the help of this wonderful little book, The Zen of Oz. This morning we're going to look at the greatest gift with which we are endowed after life itself, which is the gift of choice. And with our choices come natural results or consequences. It sounds a little like the law of cause and effect, doesn't it? We'll begin our journey with Dorothy as we explore the consequences of her and our choices. Ernest Holmes, on page 195 of The Science of Mind, says, "We have the ability to choose what we will do with our lives and are unified with a law which automatically produces our choices. While we do not have the ability to destroy the divine idea of ourselves, we do have the ability to deface it, to make it appear discordant. There is a perfect concept of each of us held in the mind of the universe as an already accomplished fact, but we are subject to the law of our own choice. Every choice we make, whether or not we make that choice consciously or not, has a consequence or a natural result. In fact, we could say that our lives are the natural result of the compilation of choices that we've made up until now, right? You might argue that, well, I didn't choose to be born into that dysfunctional family or be involved in that accident, etc. And there are some courses of thought that say that we really do choose it all, from choosing, our parents to being wherever we are when whatever happens. But for the sake of today's discussion, let's say you didn't choose that, okay? However, you still have the choice about how you respond to wherever you find yourself, right? So let's start by looking at the character of Dorothy. Both the conscious and unconscious choices that Dorothy made to her life situation caused her life to spin out of control like a tornado. This is a perfect example of the law of our own choice, as Ernest Holmes calls it. Again, the law of cause and effect. Wizard of Oz trivia here. What was Dorothy's last name?
Grace, starts with a G.
Yeah, starts with a G. Good.
Dorothy
Graham?
No, close. Dorothy Gale. Isn't that appropriate, right? Yeah. I know. So let's look briefly at her life as the movie begins. Dorothy runs home to tell Auntie Em and Uncle Harry that mean old Mrs. Gulch hit Toto with a rake and threatened to involve the sheriff merely because the dog gets into her garden and chases her nasty cat every day. But Auntie Em and Uncle Henry don't really seem to care, do they? "Don't bother us now, honey," insists Uncle Henry, as he and Auntie Em take the small chicks from the incubator and put them quickly under the hens in the nearby crates. "This old incubator's gone bad, and we're likely to lose a lot of our chicks." But could there be something deeper going on here? Could the broken incubator really be Auntie Em and Uncle Henry's loveless home where Dorothy is ignored? The incubator has gone bad, all right, and the chick that Auntie Em and Uncle Henry are about to lose is their niece, Dorothy. Dorothy's Kansas is bleak. It's gloomy. It's a gray place. Remember how the movie's in black and white when it begins, right? Because it's missing the love that would otherwise color her world. Dorothy desperately yearns for one thing, the one thing that we all yearn for, and that is love. But Auntie Em and Uncle Henry don't seem capable of giving it. In fact, Auntie Em treats her niece as a nuisance and leaves her alone to work out most of her own problems. So Dorothy chooses to focus all of her affection on her little dog, Toto. Only Toto loves her unconditionally. I can understand that feeling. Giving her a taste of the affection she craves. So here's where Dorothy's choices really get interesting. Why would she endanger Toto's life by allowing him to run through the mean-spirited Mrs. Gulch's yard every day, if Toto was her only source of love? Hunk, who's one of the farmhands, tries to get Dorothy to step back and notice her unconscious choices. "When you come home, don't go by Mrs. Gulch's place," he tells her. "Then Toto won't get into her garden and you won't get into trouble, see?" Right? But Dorothy obviously wants to get into trouble. And the more trouble she gets into more trouble than she bargained for when Mrs. Gulch and the sheriff show up at her door, and neither she nor her uncle or aunt can stop them from taking Toto. She has sacrificed Toto, the thing that she loves most, in an attempt to win the attention and love of people who quite obviously are not capable of giving it to her. And at a subtler level, probably because she was hurt and angry at not getting the love so she's taking it out on Mrs. Gulch. When Toto makes his valiant escape from Mrs. Gulch's basket, Dorothy runs away. And of course, we know that because of the choice, she ultimately gets caught in a cyclone and winds up over the rainbow in the land of Oz. So if you get caught up in a cyclone because you ran away from home to save your dog from being destroyed by the sheriff because you let the dog run through a mean old maid's garden, you might want to stop and ask yourself, can I afford the consequences of my choices? Because we don't get to have a say in the consequences. They are the natural outworking of the law. We only get to have a say about the choices we make. So perhaps, just perhaps, Dorothy should have stopped to think what compelled her to let her dog run through that mean old maid's garden in the first place. We just possibly could have avoided nightmarish trips over the rainbow if we became conscious of our choices in Kansas. All we have to do is step back and observe the choices we make every moment. That can be a little daunting sometimes. If Aunt Em and Uncle Henry do not treat you as you want them to, you could choose to feel hurt and rejected, like Dorothy, and then you might choose to vent your anger and hostility by tormenting Mrs. Gulch. You may think that Auntie Em and Uncle Henry are the cause, but whenever we impulsively react to something, we are actually choosing to respond that way. Our decision to react impulsively is simply an unconscious choice. If, like Dorothy, your whole life revolves around the pain of not receiving Auntie Em's love, then every choice is going to be about trying to get that love or to protect yourself from the hurt you feel by not having it. When you're upset with one person, you are saying that you believe they are withholding the only piece of love in the universe that's available to you, and that is simply not true. There's an infinite amount that's available to you all of the time. You could also choose to let go of the need to get the love from the one particular place and find it elsewhere. Whenever you're faced with a choice, consider this question: will this choice bring me happiness? Ella Wheeler Wilcox wrote, "One ship drives east and the other drives west, by the self-same winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sails and not the gales that determine the way they go." So I want to move our conversation from the metaphysical into the physical for a moment, and I want to talk a little bit about Bruce Lipton, who I've brought up before, and he is a research scientist, a medical school professor, and the author of the book, The Biology of Belief, and I still want to get that on our spiritual movie night one of these nights. He has made an amazing discovery about the biological mechanisms by which the cells receive and process information. Rather than our genes controlling us, he's discovered that our genes are in fact controlled by environmental influences outside of ourselves, including our thoughts and our beliefs, the choices that we make. Accordingly, we are not victimized by the biological inheritance from our ancestors. Rather, we truly are co-creators in our lives and our biology. So this new science, which is just about 20 years old, but only recently has becoming known, is called epigenetics. Until the discovery of epigenetics, it was believed that the cell's nucleus, which contains the DNA, was pre-programmed so that it was, to speak, the brain of the cell, quite necessary for the functioning. However, science has now discovered that the cells can live and function quite well with their nuclei removed. So they discovered that was not the brain after all. The real brain of the cell is the membrane, the outside, which reacts and responds to outside influences, dynamically adjusting to an ever-changing environment. As human beings, a collection of cells, what does this mean for us? It means that as we encounter various environmental influences, we tell our genes what to do. But usually we tell them unconsciously, right? A few years ago, the American Cancer Society released a surprising statistic. They said that 60% of cancer is avoidable by changing one's lifestyle and diet. In other words, by making different choices. This is from an organization that for the past 50 years has been looking for cancer genes. They've been looking for that one key that triggers everything. Now they're saying it's not so much your genes, but the choices that you make. Which brings me to my point that perhaps it's time we quit going through life making bad or unconscious choices, unnecessarily walking past Miss Gulch's house, refusing to cope with Kansas, and running away from our problems. Because like Dorothy, we'll have to deal with the natural results or the consequences of those choices. Ernest Holmes, on page 143 of The Science of Mind, says we cannot live a choiceless life. Every day, every moment, every second, there is a choice. So today, choose whom you will serve. Will you serve love, happiness, peace, plenty, power? In other words, will you serve God? Will you serve Spirit? The great news is that you do get to decide. Remember to ask yourself this question to keep yourself from going unconscious. Can I afford the consequences of this choice? It takes mindfulness. It takes practice. It takes more practice and more practice. It takes good friends reminding us to practice. And the results, the effects, the consequences are well worth it. So, remember to take a look at what you're thinking and what the consequences could be. And so it is. And next week, don't miss it because we're going to discuss that timeless question, if I only had a brain. And so it is.